Welcome back, everybody, to
Hello,
the
hello.
RacePlazaMedia podcast. My name is Milan.
My name is Pia.
And she is still my sister.
Still, and
Still
always will be.
Siblings. And this weekend, we'll be talking about the stuff that we watched, as always.
Yes.
So we watched Formula One.
Correct.
We watched Supercross.
Oh, we did.
And then we also watched a little bit of the European Le Mans series, the 4-hour race. But because we didn't watch all of it, we're not really going to do a recap of it because we're going to finish that later.
But we do have a little bit to chat about it. I have an official complaint to voice, and I have some news about it too that I'll share later in the later part of the podcast. But let's start off with our boys from Formula One.
Correct. So they were racing in Suzuka, Japan this weekend.
Yes.
Which is a home race for Yuki Tsunoda,
Correct.
which is very exciting for him. Also, of course, very exciting for him, and also like a very vital race for him because it was the first one in the Red Bull car.
Yes.
He and they were flying the special livery on
Correct.
that one because this year is the last year Red Bull has a Honda engine. So it's really coming to the end of an era for them.
Yeah.
Next year they will have a Ford engine, and I truly hope it works out
Is
for
it
them.
engine or power unit?
Honestly, I thought the engine was Honda, but you know what? Maybe I'm lying.
I don't know. But I do have to say, I did enjoy their special livery for this weekend. The full, or the top of it was all white with the red bull on top. And
The
then
chrome red.
Chrome red, yeah,
Yes.
you're very right. And then the bottom of it was all black, of course. But it was nice because Red Bull, I feel like, doesn't always or rarely, I feel like, participates in these special liveries. So it's very nice.
It is the Honda engine, sorry.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Perfect. Thank you for checking. And then also like the full white suit. And of course, both Yuki and Max had like special helmets as well. I mean, Max had his standard helmet design, but just mainly in white with his typical thing,
Whatever logo
lion
design
kind
that he
of
has up
design
top.
up top. And then Yuki had a little bit more like Japanese inspired design, which was nice. But yeah, I was very much rooting for Yuki going into this weekend. His first weekend finally in a Red Bull. Is also at home. I feel like there was a lot of pressure on him.
I think what I thought was really nice that if you were online at all this week, I've seen really only positive
Yes.
things about Yuki and only really support
Correct.
for Yuki, which I think everyone knew what a difficult position he was in. Also, of course, Liam, it was difficult for him too.
Yeah.
Having to only get 2 races in the car and not really getting a chance to adjust and like just being failed by his team all around.
Yeah, I think both teams were very welcoming.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I saw a video where the Racing Bulls had a sign like, "We missed you, welcome back," kind of, Liam, which was really sweet.
Yeah, it
and then I
is.
also heard an interview from Yuki where he was talking about like that everybody was aware of the pressure that he was under and trying to take the pressure away from him. But
Yeah.
he's like, I want the pressure.
Yes.
I'm welcoming the pressure, essentially.
Which is awesome.
Which is nice because, I mean, he's been waiting. He's been the longest driver in the junior team. That before he has gotten promoted.
Got a chance,
You
yeah.
know, I don't know.
Got
English was a little bit weird just
promoted,
now.
yeah.
But you know what I mean? Because he's been in the junior Red Bull team for 4 years now.
Yeah.
And usually it doesn't take people as long, or they don't wait as long to promote somebody. I mean, he's been strong. So it's been his time, so I'm glad he's getting the opportunity. And we'll get into how the weekend went for him, but I think it was his time, and I'm excited for him.
Yeah, and I did actually watch an interview with him where he said that during the winter break, when it was announced that Liam was getting the seat, then he thought like, oh, okay, this is it. I will never get my chance. And I also was wondering if then at that point he was like, okay, I'm going to have to look for a different seat because you don't want to always be in that, quote unquote junior team.
Yeah.
Not that other teams really have that.
Well,
But
I would, yes and no. I feel like,
because like Williams Mercedes is not a lot of times, yes, they are promoted out of that, like
Yes.
George was.
That was
but
gonna be
it's-
my argument, but it's not the
not
same.
nearly as close associated at all.
Yeah.
And so it was probably very heartbreaking for him to hear that news. It's like
it was heartbreaking for me, and I have nothing to do with it, you know?
So it's awesome to see that he got the chance to do it. And this weekend also, Suzuka is a very difficult track in general.
Yeah.
They do also have like China, the new tarmac on there, which
Yes.
is making racing a little bit more difficult with the tires.
Yes.
So this was definitely a race that was almost predetermined by qualifying.
Which is so interesting because I had never thought about it like that. But even once we watched the post-race interviews, like it was such a overarching theme in the feedback without like, I mean, if you're listening to this, you might have already gotten the results, or you know that you're coming into this getting spoilers because we're not revealing.
This is a recap, right?
Exactly. But basically, everybody was saying it was a boring race. Not a lot happened. And it's because of the tarmac. It was a fresh, clean tarmac, which is great because it's speed. You have like the speeds are really high. It's clean, but then there's low tire deg, meaning you only it's only a one stop typically, unless there's something out of the ordinary or weather related.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of excitement in terms of strategy. And then this track is quite narrow. There's not a lot of overtaking opportunities. There's just this one DRS zone right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so there was not a lot of overtaking happening, period. And it's
just a handful, really.
Yeah, and I didn't know before that it was partially because of the new laid out track that I didn't realize how big
tarmac,
how big of an impact this has, which is interesting to me now. Boring in terms of
watching it.
Yeah.
Because also George Russell was like, I hope Pirelli will hear this, and because I think more and more tracks are gonna get this new tarmac, and they will have to like essentially soften the compounds on the tires. But I think I did want to start out that in the weekend, or the race weekend, we started off on Friday with a free practice, and we had a really, really scary crash for Jack Doohan. If you're unfamiliar, so in free practice as well in qualifying, you are allowed to keep your DRS open. So you obviously just to like get the best times in. However, because you almost take, I think, T1 flat out, you and DRS is disabled usually by braking. And I guess Doohan wasn't familiar with that because Formula 2 doesn't race in Suzuka. So he kept the DRS flap open, and he, with 50 Gs, he sent it essentially. Like he was like, it was a mistake on his end, but like I think this could have happened to any rookie.
Yeah. I had also read online that apparently he had said that in the simulator it was possible to take it with the open DRS. Take that corner with it, and then people were like destroying him, of course, in the comments were like, clearly in real life that's not a thing.
Yeah, but you don't know that.
But yeah,
if
and then
you've never
also
raced there.
Exactly, that's what I was getting at. Like all the rookies didn't have experience. They just had the simulator experience and whatever time they had in the free practice. So that's why also his big accident in free practice 1 was so detrimental to his weekend.
Free practice 2.
No, it happened in free practice 1. Right at the beginning of it. Oh, no, sorry, you're right. Because free practice run, he didn't even race because
it was
the reserve
Japanese driver who got
which
the chance.
Of course, makes sense that you have a Japanese reserve driver drive at home. But then the question is, did you really have to take the drive time away from Jack Doohan, a rookie who has no experience on the track? Or shouldn't you have given him Gasly's car to practice?
In this case, like, I don't know what the technicalities is. I don't know if there's something in Gasly's contract, that is like, hey, I get to drive all my practices.
Yeah.
And then it's also, you probably want to give the driver who's more likely to score points.
Yes.
I don't know what the thought process behind it is, but it seems like a little bit like you're setting up Doohan for failure in that case by not giving him more time. Especially because Doohan, it has also been a minute since he was in Formula 2, because he has been the reserve driver for Alpine for a few years now, right? And I'm like, with Doohan, it's also this almost like this Liam Lawson situation where there's so much like pressure on him because there's Colapinto waiting, and there's always these rumors that he's going to get dropped. But it's like, give this guy a chance.
Seriously. And also, he's not performing that bad.
I don't think so either.
He's close to Gasly, and I think that's all you can expect from a rookie at this point. Like, yes, of course, crashing the car out during free practice, and they had to really work really, really hard.
Because he skipped free practice 3 then. right? They only got a few laps in there
Yes.
because they had to rebuild the car.
Yeah, but I mean, but still, they
Yeah.
had to rebuild it and then give him as much time as he could possibly take
Mm-hmm.
before then going into qualifying, where it's a 1 lap pace situation and you don't get that many laps in then either.
Mm-hmm.
So it was so tricky. But yeah, there was definitely an interesting start to then a boring race.
Yes. So talking about qualifying, I do also think qualifying, they set Yuki up a little bit for failure
Yes.
because Yuki, I think, could have made it into Q3. He had a really
Yes.
strong weekend overall in free practice, but then he made it into Q2. However, then they only essentially gave him 1 lap to nail it,
Yes.
and he unfortunately didn't. So he ended up qualifying in 15th, which is, I mean, it was overall just really close anyways.
Yes.
But I think there was between 10th and 15th, it's like 3/10.
Yeah,
So
but
you
then
can see how tight it is. But it's like you're giving the guy who's new in this car, right? Who a car that is notoriously difficult to drive.
Yes.
Right? Who the only person who can
Seems to
handle
be
it
able to handle it is Max.
is Max, who's also the car's probably built around him too. But
Yes.
you have to give credit where credit is due. Is Max
of
is
course.
obviously of a different,
Yes.
build.
Yeah.
He built different,
Built different.
literally.
Yeah.
But so it's a little bit unfortunate that they didn't give him 2 laps to
Yes.
try to do it.
Because I agree. I 100% believe that he could have made it into Q3. And then Suzuka is, and it's not news that Suzuka is a race that is kind
depending on the conditions also.
yes, of course, depending on the conditions. But if it's regular average conditions, it's based on your track position going into the race.
Yes, there was a lot that was really absurd thing that happened during qualifying, which I had never seen before, or I don't recall seeing, is essentially when the drivers drove over the grass, it created so much heat because it was so dry that the grass caught on fire, which was mental.
Yes.
It also is kind of hardcore and heavy metal.
Yes, it is. It is so badass in a way.
It kind of is,
Yes.
So we had that, and then
Yes.
however overnight it rained a lot.
Yes.
So you didn't have the chance of that happening during the race, which I think would have made things a little bit more
I
interesting.
think so too, especially if they would have had to red flag it briefly,
because
which
they
they
did
had to do for qualifying.
in Q2, right?
Yes. But also I wanted to also just talk about quickly about Isaac during qualifying, because he was complaining about his seat. There were some issues with the seat, and people were, I think, half joking maybe online that his cojones
His private parts.
yes, were stuck in the belt somehow weirdly. And then I also thought it was interesting because so basically he was complaining that there were some issues with the seat, and you could clearly tell when he came in to the pits that when they were adjusting it, that he was in pain.
Yeah.
And I would argue that a F1 driver has a little bit of a higher pain tolerance. They're not distracted easily. I mean, we've had experiences with F1 drivers driving through these crazy heated conditions.
Like
they
Singapore and stuff
drive
like
when
that.
they're sick. Carlos Sainz coming back after getting his appendix taken out.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not gonna miss a race unless they have to. And you could see it in his face that he was clearly in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And then I thought it was also interesting because Julian Palmer was talking about it's so interesting that he's having these seat issues now.
Yeah.
Third race into the season. Usually you would adjust the seat and have it all figured out by testing, latest the first race.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
So it was really interesting. I'm glad they got it sorted, because I remember he was talking on the radio that he was like, oh, I'm so sorry if this is going to ruin my qualifying. And then he made it into Q2 and he's like, oh, it's still not quite right.
And then
made it into Q3.
He ended up getting out of the car though, so they were trying to make some adjustments.
Yes, exactly.
I will say, I know Kimi Antonelli is my guy, right? But Isaac is my guy too. I really enjoy Isaac outside and inside the car.
Yeah.
He seems like a really genuine guy.
Yeah.
I will say, I think one of the most annoying things that happened in qualifying is Carlos Sainz's penalty, which is so avoidable. So Carlos essentially in Q2, he finished his lap, and then Lewis was still on a fast lap. So he did his out lap, and then he was going to put one more good lap in. I don't know if it was just for practice or whatever. Technically, he had already made it through, but he was on an outlap, and then Sainz ended up blocking him hard, and it's like. So Sainz ended up getting a 3 grid penalty. He qualified in 12th and ended up starting in 15th.
Yes.
And once again, in a track that is so notorious, where like your qualifying position determines almost everything, right? To then pick up such an avoidable penalty is so stupid, because why was no one paying attention that there's someone out there on an outlap?
Yeah, and to clarify, you're not necessarily blaming Carlos Sainz, because he had just finished his push lap, and he was maybe just taking a breather there for a second.
Who knows?
But like, who knows? Yeah, but his team could have communicated to him like, hey, caution, Lewis is coming behind you. He's on a push lap. Get out of the way. It's an easy thing to do. There's space there, especially going into T1. There's space for him to get out of the way. So I agree. It was such a, Jesus, I'm hitting and abusing my mic today. It's such an unnecessary penalty. The last thing I want to bring up for qualifying, I don't know if you have anything else to say, but the last thing I want to say for qualifying, I was so stoked for Max Verstappen that he was so excited. I feel like over the years, like obviously he's won many races. He's
64th, I think, was this weekend.
I don't know, and he's gotten, of course, many poles, but it was just so nice to hear him over the radio. He was so ecstatic about it, and also celebrating his pole position. Like, yes, he's might have not had the best start of the season, but we're so early into the season. I hate it. We were talking about it. Like, some people were like, oh yeah, Max's season is over. They're like already starting to write him off. I'm like, guys, it's 3 races in. It's 25 races this season, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
24,
how can you like say that? It's so early. So much can happen. So, but all I wanted to say was I was just really excited for Max. I love seeing the excitement.
Yes,
you know?
Absolutely. Love to see the excitement from Max too, because obviously he knew that qualifying in the front was detrimental.
Yeah.
The only way you're really going to make anything up is through strategy.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into that in just a second. But it was awesome to see him this happy.
Yes, agreed.
So how about we talk about the starting grid?
Okay, sure.
So starting grid, Max in the front.
Yes.
Then we had Lando in the second place. So he started on the right side, Max on the left side. And then we had Oscar Piastri on third. Charles on fourth. George Russell in fifth. Kimi Antonelli in sixth. Isaac Hadjar in 7th, Lewis Hamilton in 8th.
Which is also, I just wanted to point out, it's so sweet. Or it's kind of, I'm sure it's like a big moment for Isaac as well. You're on the same row as your hero.
Yeah, because Isaac is a big Lewis Hamilton fan.
Lewis Hamilton fan, which is so adorable.
Yeah.
And I love it. I mean, why wouldn't you be? I mean, Lewis Hamilton is the GOAT,
you
know?
Yeah, and there's also this video of where Isaac is like on the radio and he's like, I'm gonna wave to Lewis. I'm gonna wave to Lewis. And then they met when they did the photo shoot.
Yes.
And then Lewis shook his hand and stuff like that. And he was like over the moon. And I get it. I get it. Like like a lot of these rookies, they grew up watching Lewis in his literal prime and like dominating, you know. I think like the next generation that's gonna come up will see Max as that, right?
Yes, agreed.
And so it's really awesome. Then after Lewis, we had really awesome Williams. We had Alex Albon in 9th, Oliver Behrman in 10th. Should I go through all of them?
I mean, sure, if you want to, but also just to emphasize, we have 3 rookies in the top 10. We had, of course, Antonelli, Hadjar, and then Behrman, which is incredible. I'm so excited for these rookies because, I mean, you never know going into the season how they will fare. So to see them do quite well is really, really nice. But then I'll just round it off quickly. So we have Gasly 11th, then we have Sainz, Alonso, Lawson, and Tsunoda were also on the same... No, they weren't on the same row. Were they on the same row?
They were on the same row after Carlos's penalty.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay, gotcha. Yes. So they ended up starting on the same row, which is also kind of destiny. You know, I don't know. They switched their teams.
Interesting.
It is interesting.
But then again, I don't think there's any like bad blood between them.
I don't think so
because
either.
like it's
Why-
not.
It has nothing to do with them amongst each other.
Yeah.
So then we have Hülkenberg in 16th, Bortoleto in
17th.
17th, Ocon, Doohan, and then Stroll rounded off.
Yeah, Stroll just had a really bad weekend. I would like to point out. So Yuki qualified with a 1:28.000, right? In first place, qualified in 1:27.5. So it's just a half a second between first and 15th place. How exciting is that?
Yeah.
That is really awesome.
That's been this whole season. I feel like it's been just such an exciting, or it's so close. It's really marginal.
I'm so sorry, I lied. 1.26. Max did a 1:26.9. So it's point. So it's a little different. Sorry, I was looking at Q2.
But then there's also track development. I would argue that comes
well,
into
and less
it
traffic
maybe.
also.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But
Sorry.
that's what I love about this season. It's really close. There's also these really cool videos online where they overlay the cars.
Yes.
Just to see, to put it into
Perspective.
yeah, exactly. How close it is. I mean, it's not a car length. It's like literally inches, centimeters, or millimeters even, how close it is. And it's sometimes hard to grasp, I think.
I mean, just to point out, so Max did in Q3, he did a 1:26.983, and Lando did a 1:26.995.
Yeah.
So that's insane.
Yeah. It's wild.
So that's super close, and yeah, it's literally just millimeters, centimeters that is in between them.
Yeah.
But this is also like, I think one of the things you really have to give Max props for. Like, Max has a iron mentality. Like, of course he has been in these situations before, but when it comes down to it, Max performs, Max delivers.
Yes.
And arguably also in a car that seems to be quite difficult, right? They were so going into the race, there was rain in the morning. We talked about it, right? There was a little bit of water still on the track,
Like little puddles right at the
like right on the racing line in the
Yes.
beginning. But and then there was anticipation for potential rain around lap 20, which would have made the race a little bit more exciting.
Yes.
But then, honestly, not a lot happened during the
No.
race. A lot of people locked up into the final chicane.
Yes.
There was a little bit that, but not enough to really create any situations.
Yeah.
Then we had Lewis overtook Isaac, and then we had a few overtakes here, but I think it was probably less than, I want to maybe say 15 overtakes on track. I don't know if that's true.
I mean, I remember it right at the beginning, which I remember it also very clearly because it hurt my fantasy team, is that Bortoleto had lost 2 positions.
Oh yeah, he had a bad start.
Well, it was that, and also he was on a hard tire, I believe, at that
Yes.
point. And then the others mostly around him were on the mediums tires, so there was a little bit of that.
We had actually Jack and Lance started on a soft tire.
Yes, so they were also there.
And then they were behind because Bortoleto started in 17th.
Yes.
And then 17th?
I think so.
And then we had Bortoleto was on 17th. Esteban was on the hard tire, I believe. And then Jack and Lance were on the soft.
Yes.
And Lewis also started on the hard tire, and everyone else started on a medium tire. I couldn't understand why Lewis did an offset strategy, because you were like, the only way really you're going to do any type of overtaking here is probably through undercutting. And I think this is one of the more interesting situations that happened during the race, is around, I think was it around lap 16 or maybe something like that, when there was a radio message, or at least we saw it. It was on the broadcast around lap 16 when Lando Norris's engineer was like, Bucks, come into the pits, right? And then he ended up staying out.
Yes.
So it was a little bit of a fake. And then Max and Lando ended up pitting at the same time. And then it created the situation because Red Bull had 2 bad
very poor pit, which is very atypical of them.
Yeah, they're usually good in the pits, but Max had a 3.3 stop, but he still made it ahead out of Lando, because Lando's so the McLarens were all the way at the end of the pit lane. Because they won the Constructors' Championship, you get to pick first where you want to have your box at. And he ended up coming out like maybe like half car length behind Verstappen, and then he was trying to like
if at
wiggle
all,
his
yeah.
way in essentially, but they ended up being on the pit exit next to each other, and then Lando was driving on grass, and because Max was like, I'm not giving you any room, why would I?
Yeah.
And then Lando was like, oh, he pushed me wide. In his post-race interview, he was like, no, he didn't.
Yeah.
Like, he was just trying something. We both thought it would have been maybe better if he would have stayed right on Max's behind.
Yes.
Just because you're picking up a lot of dirt by driving through the grass.
Yes.
And Max wasn't pushing. Max was just staying where he was.
And then Max was also joking in the cool down room, like, oh, this is a very expensive lawnmower.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was funny. And like you said, I mean, Lando knew that at the end that this was not really, you can try. They always all try.
Of course.
And
I mean, Max said that Lando let go of his pit limiter.
Yeah.
Essentially, on the steering wheel, you have a button that limits your speed, so that way you don't get a penalty, because I think it's a 10-second penalty for speeding in the pits, even if it's just like 0.1 over the speed. But, you know, nothing happened either. No one got a penalty. I don't know if you noticed, but you know who got 2 penalties this weekend? Sainz.
Really?
Carlos got a 20,000.
Oh, wait, no, I was going to talk about that
later.
Oh,
that was
yes, that's my news.
Oh, that was your news. Okay, we'll get into that a little bit later.
We'll stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to, I mean, also like one of the few things maybe that was talked about, it was just Albon's like communication with his engineer over the radio, because like, I mean, honestly, there was not much else going on, so they just showed
him arguing a little bit.
There's something with the shifter, and he was not giving sass or anything, but it's a high tense moment. He's like, what's going on here? We're not fixing this kind of.
And then later on, they argued again, or quote unquote argued. It was like, why didn't I pit before the guy ahead of me? And I thought it was also interesting. The commentators were also pointing that out, that McLaren, the only way they would have done it if they would have done the undercut.
Yes.
But they pitted at the same lap. So they should have, I think if they would have pitted Lando when they said they were gonna, I think it would have maybe benefited him more. Maybe.
I mean, they pitted Piastri quite early to cut off or hold off
Russell.
I mean, not that there was a lot of danger from him there.
Russell ended up pitting quite early, but he ended up pitting into traffic.
Yeah.
I think it was like an attempt to do something.
I think
because
so.
The Mercedes is good, but it's not as fast as the McLaren.
Yeah.
So, and of course, Charles was there too. Charles was ahead. So they were trying to undercut Charles, but that didn't really work out.
Yeah, but then the only other thing that we were talking about, and the commentators were also talking about, is why didn't they give Piastri the opportunity to pass Lando, like do team orders, let him pass, let him try to overtake Max, because it seemed like he had a little bit more pace than Lando potentially, because he was in the DRS for a long time. And even Gabriele Bortoletto was saying, like, even if you have more pace, it's hard to overtake if you don't have significantly more pace. So I don't know if Piastri would have been able to, but I feel like they should have given him the opportunity to try, or maybe put Max under a little bit more pressure, because maybe something could have happened, and then they could have swapped the seats back or the positions back so that it's still the 2 and 3 for Lando and Piastri. But I think they should have at least given it a try, you know?
So, I mean, I have like the opinion of that there's like, if you're faster, then go pass, you know?
I hear that.
And on the other hand, it's also because I was thinking about this, like a bit, I wanted to go back and listen to Lando's radio messages at the time, because they didn't show anything of him ever discussing or getting any communication like, hey, if you don't pick it up, we'll do the swap.
Yes.
I don't know if the thought process is also like, we're not going to tell the guy who's leading the championship to give up a position, because these are vital points. And
but I mean,
sorry. And then it's also because there's also no, McLaren currently doesn't face any threat from Red Bull for the Constructors' Championship, because both McLarens are performing at all times. But with Red Bull, it's just one car that's currently performing.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but then I can already see down the line they're going to keep asking Piastri to maybe potentially make the switches. I feel like it should go both ways. He should have tried it, and if he wouldn't have made the swap, I'm sure he wouldn't have had an issue to give the position back. and then they still would have had the same type of point situation. It's the third race of the season. It's not clear that Lando will be winning the driver championship.
No.
Piastri is still in the running as well.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily agree with that argument at this point of the season. So I think they should have at least given it a try, because you have nothing to lose, you know? Piastri could have given it a try. If it wouldn't have worked, great. Then he would have swapped back. If it would have worked, they might have gotten extra points. Piastri would have gotten another win. Even better. But to not even, because there was nothing else happening. They were not at risk from Charles, you know?
Yeah.
He was 14 seconds behind Piastri at the end. So there was no risk. I don't see a risk there that would have hurt them instead of giving it a try.
I mean, I just think, like, because this will happen at some point this year where Oscar is in front and Lando is behind, then it just can't be like, well, let Lando pass, you know? But I think it will happen, even though they say they don't have a number one driver, which I think contractually they don't. But I think it's going to come down to playing the team game. But in the end, I think if it comes down to being for the drivers' championship, I don't think it's Oscar's responsibility whatsoever, right? We'll see how that works out. I think McLaren, we do see a continuous problem that we had last year, where there is some strange strategy calls that they still don't have it locked down. I think you have like Red Bull, who's more locked down with stuff like this, and McLaren just really needs to get on top of that, because last year they wasted a lot of points that way.
Yes.
They're lucky that there's no other team currently that has two competitive cars this in that same manner.
Yes.
It's just it's a little bit
a little bit of a bummer.
Well, you know, we'll see how it goes.
Yes.
But I wanted to bring up the driver's standing now.
Okay. Well, do you want to go over like the results?
Oh, yeah,
I mean, we don't have to go through all of it because most of it pretty much stayed the same.
Yeah, honestly.
But then Max ended up winning. But also, I do like that he only won by 1.423 seconds. You know, it wasn't like at the beginning, there was a moment where it seemed like, oh, he might be driving away with this. But then it didn't happen. Lando was never really in DRS after the start, not that I remember.
No, Max really, he said that also in his post-race interview, he never gave him the opportunity to get in that.
Yeah.
Max also had like the cleanest race.
Yeah.
No issue, no mistakes.
He did complain about some upshifting issues at the beginning, but then they resolved it within like 2 to 3 laps.
But once again, that is also not a Max thing, or where he messed it up. And this is just really shows like Max is so, when it comes in, he's so locked in. Yeah. Like, I'm never worried about Max making a mistake in the front. I'm never like, of course, like if a driver that I'm rooting more for, like if a Ferrari's behind, I'm like, oh, maybe Max is going to do something, but Max doesn't, right? Did he have last year a situation where he messed up? Yes, but he was also 30 seconds ahead. Yeah. So like you can do some nonsense, you know?
Yes.
If but it's just a testament to what a force Max is. And it's kind of also, I feel like I've come around in my Max.
Yes.
Like, because I used to be like, I wasn't really rooting for him that much. But it's also like, if you're winning 22 races or whatever out of 23 or 20 races out of 23 in a season, it's like kind of like, I want something else. I want you to DNF because of technical failure, just to make it a little bit.
Not necessarily rooting for them.
Well, it's just because like make it a little bit more interesting.
Yes.
But now it's just really awesome to see someone who's so good in their prime, and I get to witness it. Yeah. And this year it also seems like maybe we'll actually have a fight for the drivers' championship. And sorry for all the McLaren fans, but I'm going to be rooting for Max when it comes down to it. Because I'm not a Lando stan, I would support Oscar over Lando.
Oh, that 100%.
But if it comes down to Max or Lando, I would want Max to get his 5th, you know?
And then he has 5 back-to-back championships, just like Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, and
but we'll see. But so Max came in first, Lando second, Oscar third. I mean, that's how everything started off. We had
the only change we have in the top 8 is Lewis and Isaac. That's the only change we have.
Yes, yeah. literally.
Yeah, because Charles fourth. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, it's fine. And we have Kimi Antonelli, which is also beautiful. He had the fastest lap.
He really turned it up at the end.
Yeah.
I thought if we had like 10 more laps, he was going to catch up to Russell.
I mean, he did get a little bit closer,
He got
for sure.
much closer.
Yeah, and then also he was able to lead the race for several laps.
The youngest driver
ever to lead the race, just because of
during
course
a champion.
the pitting.
Yeah, because he pitted quite late compared to everyone else.
He did on a medium. He was quite long on the medium,
but he did excellent.
It worked for him. But again, we have 3 rookies in the top 10. Beautiful. We have Isaac Hajar, Kimi Antonelli, and then of course Ollie Behrman. Yuki Tsunoda made up 3 positions, because he ended up coming in 12th, which is nice.
Yes, because he started in 14th.
Oh, so in 2 positions,
Yeah.
sorry. He qualified in 15th, but then started on 14th. So him coming in 12th was really nice. And I also was excited for Jack Doohan. He ended up coming in 15th when he started in 19th. So he was one of the ones that had the most improvement, which is nice to see.
Because they did that big undercut. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
That really worked out for them.
It really worked out for them. So it was nice. But yeah, overall, it was definitely a boring race.
One last thing I wanted to say before we move on from this. My really big excitement is like, I keep saying that Kimi is my guy, right? Especially when it comes for the rookies. It's really awesome to see that, like, he is right on Russell, right? And this is his first year in an F1 car. He only did 1 season in Formula 2. He skipped Formula 3, guys. I just want to point that out again. He skipped Formula 3. He went from F4 to F2, and this year he's on Russell. And it's the reason why I'm so excited is like because there was obviously a lot of pressure on him, right? And he's not getting a lot of attention, but he's doing really, really well. And I think he's doing what he needs to be doing. And I think this is also like a situation with what we had with Oscar, right? He Oscar like rolled up in that McLaren and like he delivered, right? And Kimi is showing up in this Mercedes and he's doing really, really well, and give him like 1 or 2 more seasons and he will be a force to be reckoned with.
So excited.
And especially like there is a lot of rumors, and I mean, obviously we don't know, but that the Mercedes next year is going to be super competitive.
We'll see.
We don't know, but there's like talks about it, and sometimes there are these talks that is like, oh, there's truth to it, because we had this with the McLaren where people talking like, oh, the McLaren they're doing something, and like look at them, right? They're doing so well now, which is also awesome because they've been doing a bunch of nonsense for years. Course.
But speaking of Kimi, he's 5th in the driver championship right now, which is crazy.
I'm so happy that like there's not a lot to talk about him, but it's also good that there's not a lot to talk about, but
let the driving do the talking.
Yeah, and he's doing so well, and I'm so excited for him, and I can't wait to see more of him in the car. It's going to be really exciting because like, god dang, dude, like you're really showing up.
I mean, I think overall this season I'm very excited about it. It's been a fun season so far. It's also because it's close. We have all these rookies and they're doing pretty well so far. And then also I'm very much looking forward to next season with all the changes, the new cars,
no more DRS.
I mean, there's going to be so many switch ups, so I think that could definitely change things. And we have a new team on the
Cadillac
on the grid next year, so that's going to be fun. But okay, going to the driver standings, we have Norris currently leading with 62 points
by 1 point,
by 1 singular point ahead of Max Verstappen with 61 points. Oscar Piastri is in 3rd with 49 points, which makes sense because he didn't do as well in the Australia race, which was the heartbreak, which definitely hurt him. Then in 4th we have Russell with 45, and then the top 5 rounds up with Antonelli with 30 points.
I will say I think it's so I mean I hate to see it, but I also love to see it, is that Alex Albon in a Williams is ahead in the championship of a Ferrari. I mean, of course this comes due to the double DNF.
Yes, or disqualification.
Disqualification, sorry, not DNF, of the Ferrari's last race. But he has 3 points more than Lewis. I mean, it's not gonna finish like this. But I think it's amazing because Williams last year, no points. And this year he already has 18 points on the board. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Carlos has 1 point. So we have 19 points for Williams. This is the third race.
Yes.
I just love to see it.
No,
You know?
for sure. I'm super excited.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so far the only people without any points are both Alpines, which
Okay.
is a bummer. So Gasly and Doohan.
It is a bummer, but it's also a little bit good for Jack that Gasly.
Oh, of course.
But Gasly doesn't have any points because he was disqualified last race too.
Yes, yes.
I think I actually saw a post. Sorry, before you continue, that Gasly lost 2.5 kilograms from tire degradation.
Oh, wow.
That ended up being underneath that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty crazy that you lose that much
Yeah.
weight through to tire.
No, it's crazy. And then we have Alonso has no points. Lawson, I mean, because he also just changed to the Racing Bulls, has no points. And then Bortoletto in the Kick Sauber has 0 points. Which is, Nico has 6 points so far. So that's...
Yeah, the Australia race really was good for him.
So we'll see. I mean, it's still so early
Yeah.
into the season, but it's definitely been a mostly exciting season so far. I mean, Japan
Absolutely.
race wasn't as exciting, but we have the next race coming up is this upcoming weekend in Bahrain, which is going to be nice because it's a Sunday race for us here in the US again.
Finally.
And then we have
Is that the first Sunday race we're getting, right? Because Australia
yeah,
and then
Shanghai
was
was also late Saturday.
Was it midnight?
I think so.
Something
yeah.
like that.
And then right after Bahrain, we have not Australia race. What am I saying? But we have another Sunday race right after Saudi Arabia. That's what it
Okay,
is.
Bahrain will actually be exciting because there's a lot of straights and I think there's a bunch of DRS zones, so it'll be interesting. Hopefully,
So
knock on
we'll
wood.
see. So we have 2 more back-to-back weekends of racing, which is exciting.
So this would finish up our recap for the
F1.
Japan race for F1, and we're gonna move on to Supercross.